a playlist original.
This place gives me the creeps.
Where is that?
There's something in the water. What do you mean? What is it? I don't know. There's just something in the water.
Event in 3, 2, 1.
Alien Romulus, only in cinemas. Get tickets now.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your host KS and Jackson. We said we might pivot from what we were gonna maybe do this week if we both saw Alien Romulus and give you a full Alien Romulus episode, and we both saw it. And we both want to give you a full Alien Romulus episode. So, full disclosure, if you haven't seen it yet, I'm sure this will be a spoiler discussion. So,
absolutely, without a doubt, it will be.
Yeah, so bear that in mind before listening any further. Give me a fair warning. There's probably a lot to talk about, like how I felt about it, how he felt about it. Maybe talk about how other people are feeling about it. There's a lot of praise, and then there's some discourse from a few people.
Definitely,
online,
which is made for an interesting sort of track after seeing it in the theaters. Like, been a lot of engagement online, and so many videos I've been watching with all sorts of different opinions on it, which has made the experience, I think, even better for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some interesting rankings out there from some people on X/Twitter where honestly, well, not even where they're putting this movie. I'm just more surprised where they're putting like the other ones, like so high up, and like so many good ones so far down. But I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But there are some
totally.
I've seen some flexes from their Alien rankings, like, oh, you like Alien 3 more than Aliens? That's interesting.
Oh
right.
My goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've not seen any
that's
of those.
a move. And I've seen some people I really trust that had Alien Romulus like down on their list, even below like Alien versus Predator. So that was really
my word.
So yeah, that was interesting too. It seems like there's little like nitpicky things that they're upset about, but I mean, I didn't really bother me. But you were excited. I mean, we both were excited for the movie, but you were probably more excited than
you think so.
I think you were more excited than I was. I mean, you have talked about it for a while. You were very happy when they didn't release it straight to Hulu, which was the original plan. I guess that plan was like when they were pitched the movie and Fede wanted to do it. It was like during the pandemic times where they actually like got it to him. So that's why they were going to go straight to Hulu, but they always made it with the intention of that it would be, if it was a streaming movie, it's going to look like a very expensive streaming movie. And then once things like calmed down with theaters, they kind of internally decided that they were going to release it theatrically. So that's how that change came about. And thankfully it did, because it looks, I mean, you don't have IMAX screens there, I guess.
No, unfortunately.
I got to see it in IMAX on Tuesday, and it looks and sounds amazing in IMAX. So if anyone can't see it like that, go see it that way.
I'm sure seen it in IMAX, so
I'm sure it still looked great on your screen.
Oh, absolutely, it was fantastic.
But share your little Cliff Notes thoughts about the
movie.
For
sure. So you're totally right. This was, I believe, I can't remember where I ranked it, but it was on my most anticipated releases for this year. I think it was in like a top 5 if I recall, but I had been pretty excited since it was announced. And then, like you said, when we were chatting that it got moved to a theatrical release, I was pretty pumped. Very happy to say I was floored with this movie. Like, I can kind of understand some people's nitpicks in some areas with it. Did feel, I'd say, derivative in places, but as a huge fan of the Alien franchise and all the media around this series, I love that. I don't mind that it borrows aspects from previous movies, because I love those movies. And so it's great, even though there's an abundance of Easter eggs in this movie. I was like giddy like a kid on Christmas. It's just great to be back in theaters watching an Alien movie, first time in 7 years, right? And I was a huge fan of Covenant and Prometheus.
Yeah.
So even though we're not, again, spoilers, if you haven't tuned out already, this is at your own risk. It doesn't necessarily continue directly that storyline. I didn't expect that with this movie, and I still want to get that ending, which I think is doubtful at this point. But this was a great little, exactly. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I still want to see more of that character. There's still a lot of fertile ground, but this was a great gap between Alien and Aliens, and it acknowledged plenty of other Alien movies aside from those two as well. So it hit all the marks for me. Cinematography was fantastic. I thought all of the cast was superb, particularly David Jonsson and Cailee Spaeny. Like all the reviews and all the praise I've heard for their performances was totally justified. I'm actually seeing it again tonight at 10 p.m. my time, so right around 6 your time, Gaius. Taking my girlfriend to see it, more like dragging her. I'm just happy she said yes.
Did not want to see it. She was like,
yeah.
She's probably like indifferent.
She wouldn't even really know of it. I sent her the trailer and asked if she wanted to go see a movie tonight, and she said, "Yeah, sure." And then so I was like, "Hey, great, tickets are bought. I'm seeing it again." Yeah. But yeah, I think it'll be a movie that you pick up a lot more on rewatch too. Probably some Easter eggs and nods. There was a few dialogue mixing issues for me, which is the case for a lot of like sci-fi movies. So I'm hoping to pick up some more dialogue.
Yeah,
yeah.
Especially earlier in the movie, I kind of had that issue. Even in IMAX, it was like, oh well, I was like trying to listen to hard dialogue. I mean, it wasn't like a huge detriment.
No, not at all. But you know,
deal with it with like Christopher Nolan all the time, so it's fine.
Exactly, and that happens to me on a good day with a great sound mixed movie. So I'm not really faulting the movie, probably just myself, but. Yeah, to sum it all up, I was over the moon. This is like, I would rank this quite high in my Alien ranking list of all the movies. Can't wait to see it again. I will be getting this when it gets physically released, probably ASAP. I would love to hold a 4K of this. And I can't wait to see it. The good news being I'm anticipating that we will get more entries maybe in this timeline soon because of its success. So I couldn't ask for anything more after this watch, but we haven't discussed it offline or online together yet. I'm glad that we're doing this episode, and I imagine we're probably in a similar boat, but I've been really anxious to pick your brain on what you thought about this movie too.
Yeah, I really loved it. I mean, I saw it in IMAX on Tuesday with my brother, and he is not familiar with a lot of the Alien movies, so this was like
interesting.
His kind of, I think probably the first thing he's seen from it, because I want to say maybe he saw Covenant, but I can't even remember because it's been so long. But and this kind of made up for it. So we went to the IMAX headquarters again. Like the previous week we saw Borderlands there, and that was a chore. And I was like, all right, well, hopefully this will make up for it, and hopefully he'll like it. I think more than myself, I was paying attention to like what he would think of it, because younger and like hasn't really seen a lot of these movies. And he, like, when it was over, he was just like, he loved it, and there were parts that like kind of like terrified him a little bit.
That third or fourth act, rather.
That's what really got to him. And I think our whole theater, even though like at those like screenings that they're supposed to be like press, and some friends, but usually press, they're usually a little quiet. Like everyone's paying attention to movies. Some people are taking notes, but that final 20 minutes or so, like really the whole theater was like kind of like gasping, and like like we had heard a lot about that last 20 minutes, and I was like, oh, I hope they're not overhyping it, because they kept saying, oh, it's so bonkers, and it really was. I mean, even though I know like the parts of it borrow a bit from Alien Resurrection, there's like some stuff in there that is kind of hinted at in that movie. It was just still jarring to see it, really, some of it. And especially because you're thinking like, okay, movie's wrapping up, but then in your mind it's like, all right, well, this takes place in between Alien and Alien, so we can't have like a total like happy ending, I guess. So like there has to be some major fallout. But I thought like so many people I got off at that point, and I was like, all right, well, maybe we don't need to continue this at all. And then I was like, but no, there's still more movie left. And when like when that kicked in, I was like, oh well, I was pleased with it. I'm glad that he did it. It was a pretty big swing to do. And
man, yes, was it ever? And it hit for me. I know not everyone was super pleased with that direction, but from what I've seen anyway, the majority of people, it worked for them, and myself included. I was actually genuinely like anxious and just in awe of the creature design.
Yeah, I really love that. I mean, I love that most of it was practical for the most part. I love the look of the movie. I thought it was like the look was like a nice blend of like Ridley Scott's Alien and James Cameron's Aliens. It was like a mix of the two. I kind of felt like the first half of the movie felt more like Alien, and then like the last half felt more like Aliens, which I thought was
totally
perfect. Like completely like the best thing to do for that movie. I mean, I think that's why some people are the people who don't like it. Actually, and to comment on that too, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and everyone keeps saying that, but like I agree with someone I saw earlier online that was like, I've never been more surprised by certain people who claim to love this franchise saying that they didn't like this movie. I don't understand what you couldn't like about it. And if you're getting mad over like a minute, 2 minutes worth of fan service, then that sounds like a you problem more than the movie's problem.
Totally.
And there is definite fan service in it. I mean, like I know there's like some people called it. It said it feels like a greatest hits compilation of other Alien movies, but I think that's what they needed to kind of do because everyone didn't love Alien Covenant, right? I mean, like some people did, and everyone didn't love Prometheus. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of like revisionist history now with both movies, especially like in the wake of this one coming out. People have rewatched those a lot. I've seen a lot of like, you know, we were wrong about Alien 3, we were wrong about Prometheus, we were wrong about, you know, Alien Covenant. But I think for everyone else, they needed to kind of go back to basics and do something that would please fans of those very first two movies the most.
Right.
And I think Fede Alvarez did a good job of doing that and kind of stayed true to both of those two classic movies while still maintaining his own thing too. I mean, there's a lot of his own flair that's in it as well. There's an argument that can be made. Someone posted the scene from Alien Covenant and they were like, hey, I loved Alien Romulus, but it was a really gross scene that they posted. And they were just, I just wish that like knowing Fede Alvarez, who usually goes there, that he was like nothing in Alien Romulus as far as gore goes there as much as this did. And
what was the scene from Covenant that they posted?
I forgot. It's one like I think you know what I'm talking. It's like coming out of the guy. It's like they're in the little like examination room and like
the backburster.
The backburster thing.
Yeah. That is a very horrifying scene.
Yeah.
You're
like,
right.
They're like there was nothing in there that kind of matched that, and he's really known for. I mean, if you've seen his Evil Dead remake, then you know how bloody and disgusting things can get. And there wasn't really. I mean, there were some cool like effects in it and like some cool like kills, but the kills weren't graphic at all. Really, I thought for the most part. I think there was like a lot of it was more like insinuated, and you had to like use your imagination and like to think about what was going on fully to some of the characters when they died. But like, yeah, there really wasn't that. But that really bothered me that he didn't like go full Fede Alvarez when it comes to the gore.
So I did go in there. Somebody had said that it is probably the goriest Alien movie, and so I went in there with that expectation, but was by the end of it, I was like, that was definitely not gorier than Covenant. Covenant, I would give that distinction as being the goriest, most blood-soaked Alien. Yeah. And then I quickly realized, well, this was released under Disney Fox, so that is probably why. And I'm glad it got the R rating. I think it earned it, but part of me thinks that there was probably some stuff edited out or maybe some sequences where he had to rein it in a bit because that is definitely not their area of expertise. And because, yeah, you're right, especially comparing it to his Evil Dead 2013, he definitely likes to push that boundary. It was disturbing enough in sequences that I didn't leave there thinking like I didn't get satisfied with it, but I'd rather not have had that expectation going in that it was the goriest because I definitely didn't think it was. Up there, though, for sure. There's some squeamish parts in that movie for sure, but I think it comes down to, you know, the company that produced the movie. If I were to blame anybody, I'm guessing it would be them, but it doesn't seem there was not much in there except for maybe one or two sequences, very obvious to me anyway, studio, not like interactions in there. But it mostly felt like his DNA. It felt really like Don't Breathe in Space. I've heard it called that, and I thought that was a great comparison. But on that note,
was there anything in particular that you thought, like when you said like there was some, like felt like studio kind of tinkering? Is there anything moment in particular that you thought?
Yeah, and Fede I actually just saw today in anticipation for recording this episode that Fede Alvarez was interviewed and specifically touched on the character of Rook, the on board the Renaissance station, the science officer that's featured from the torso up in this movie. Supposedly, so his likeness, those that have seen it by now know, was used, the likeness of Ian Holmes' character Ash from the first Alien movie. Apparently, according to Fede anyway, I don't know if he was really throwing him under the bus or just kind of casually saying, but that was apparently all from the brain of Ridley Scott, which I totally buy. I think that in it is, I'll agree, it did kind of interfere with, like, you know, the total immersion of the movie. Like that CGI moment is I thought it was flawless when you're seeing that character in shadow or from afar or on a screen. But
On
when
screen, yeah.
there's a lot of dedication to close-ups, and I just don't know why that was done. But that was a moment to me where the studio and Ridley as an executive producer was like, we want to throw in, you know, this other nod to the previous movies, and especially it being a character of Ridley Scott's movie. It kind of felt a little vain, but it didn't ruin the movie for me. But what were your thoughts on that? Because everyone knew that going in.
That's been like, well, for the people who didn't know, that's been the biggest bone of contention, I guess, that the biggest complaint, because they were saying it wasn't necessary to do it. And for everyone that doesn't know, Ian Holm passed away in 2020. Apparently, this was a Ridley Scott brainchild, according to Fede Alvarez. And they also consulted with Ian Holm's family, who approved it. So if his family approves it, I don't see what the big deal is. But they did approve it. And they also, Fede Alvarez said that he had another, I don't know what the other idea was, but he had another idea in case they didn't approve it that he could have pivoted to instead. So
okay, I would like that more.
it wasn't like, you know, like this is an end all be all kind of thing. But I guess how they did it, they brought him back using an animatronic with some CGI enhancements. Daniel Betts did the voice with generative AI and computer modeling used to make it sound more like the late actor. This is a lot of people complained about it a lot because they didn't think it was necessary, and they thought it was a unnecessary nod to the original movie. When there was already so many other little things that were already there that you didn't necessarily need that.
What do you think?
It didn't. So I agree with you that in shadow and on screen it looked fine, and it didn't really bother me. But there, I do agree with you. There was a lot of close-ups of it, more than I thought they were going to have. Yeah, and then when you're looking at it up close like that, you can tell that it's enhanced by some kind of CGI, and that kind of took me out of it a little bit. But not enough for me to like I mean, people are like upset that they did this, especially because it's the AI thing, and like they're saying even with like the family's permission, they think that it's a really bad move for you know, creatives like going into stuff like this. Like, it sets a bad precedent for this kind of thing to, you know, have this even as an option to use. But I mean, like I feel like at the end of the day, like it comes down to his family and like what they wanted, and they asked their permission, and they said yes. Now some people are even throwing it in their family's face. Well, they were like, are they going to turn down a really big payday? And I was like, okay, well, I mean, they did, but they could have still said no. I mean, they could have been like, no, I think it's disrespectful to whatever his career, his likeness, whatever. I'm sure they were presented with like what this was going to be, what the like. Maybe not the whole like, you know, script with how they're going to use him, but maybe the general idea of like what they were going to use his likeness for, and they had to pitch them on like what it would be like before they even said yes. So I'm sure they were okay with what the final result was. I mean, they could. I agree with you. Another option could have been used. I mean, I'm struggling to think of what else could have been used instead, but I'm sure there was other ways to do this to kind of have that connection. Between that story and this story, it did kind of like, I mean, there were some groans in the theater when I saw it at the IMAX screening. That were
no doubt.
But I mean, but once the movie went along and they were using it more, and then like kind of watching how like he was like manipulating things a bit, and then like how he was more kind of a really effective character down the line in the movie. Like it wasn't just a cheap one scene gimmick. It kind of like played a part into this overall story a bit more than you know, a situation like that would normally do. If any other project probably would have just thrown that in for one scene and be like, well, here's your little Easter egg with that and been done with it. But the moment was utilized pretty well within the story, so I think that's why I forgave it a bit more, because that made it feel like it wasn't a gimmick. That made it feel like it was a bit more necessary to the overall narrative. That being said, I could have gone into a direction though too, but
totally. Like I think. And I didn't have any like ethical concerns. Like I'd read too that they had got permission from Ian Holm's family, and they speculated that he would have wanted this opportunity if he was still alive. I was like, that's great. I don't love, like you touched on, the precedent that it sets. We've had this conversation about AI being used in film. I don't love that it's adding to that. It's again nowhere near the point where like I'm bashing the movie for it, and I was quickly over it once I saw it. It's pretty much your first scene of seeing that character speak. You're like, that's not quite right. Uncanny Valley feeling, but I just didn't love yeah, I would have liked to have seen a different approach. There's lots of other talented actors that could have played an android character. There's even like Lance Henriksen. People have speculated could have been a cool.
Oh, because they're like he's still alive. Yeah, they're like that's another
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't like though, and I'm glad this wasn't used. People have in this conversation, people have mentioned the potential use of Michael Fassbender as David or Walter.
I saw that too. Yeah.
I don't. I want to reserve that character for whatever he's cooking up on board of the Covenant in this universe. Like I want to see more of that character, but this wouldn't have been where I would have wanted to see it. I don't know if you felt differently or.
No, I actually felt the same way. I mean, I think I wouldn't want to see that character used as like a kind of extended cameo or something like this. I want more actual stories. So yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. But I did see that as an option. I saw someone post there like, why would you do that when Michael Fassbender is like right there?
Right.
But like I don't know. I mean, I think people are more upset about it than they should be. I mean, I guess someone wrote actually on our site, I think they were saying like for a movie that kept boasting about its practical effects, like this is like one big jarring example of not using practical effects. And yeah, that's a good point. But like the movie also has so many other instances where they are using practical effects that look amazing.
True.
And but I mean I get the issue with it. I just don't think like I've seen online that it's like ruined the movie for some people, and
like that's a little dramatic, I think. But
yeah, I did really ruin it for me. But it was surprising to see at first, a little bit jarring, and
I would say it undoes a little bit of goodwill.
Even though I knew it was kind of coming because like I heard it, I heard someone had told me.
Yeah,
but like I was like, okay, what's that going to look like? And I don't know, maybe with a little bit more money, it could have looked better. I don't even know I don't know if that could have looked any better at all. But
people are saying and speculating that people are going to be able to touch that up for like a physical release and that it won't look as bad as it does right now in theaters. And if that's the case, I think that's pretty interesting because there's a lot of materials out there like other AI that can help, I don't know, blend images and stuff. I don't really know if that goes into like touching up a movie for physical release, but I've heard people say that online. I'm like, oh, that'd be cool. It would hurt less watching it on a 4K Blu-ray and not it looking that bad, but whatever, we'll see. I was still overwhelmingly positive with the movie experience, but I wanted to touch back on something you said earlier about the lack of like, I don't know if you said what adjective you used, if it was disturbing or gory, but there was one scene of a character that dies via mostly acid. And I thought that scene was pretty disturbing. Like there's a sequence where, first of all, he's like just laying there taking all the acid. It's like but
and not
gets
moving.
It on his face, chest. But there's a great sequence where he puts his hand up after getting acid and like we see he's dissolved to the bone. I thought that was a really great effects heavy moment too, and like a disturbing death. That was one of my favorites, I think. This character played by Spike Fearn. Is it Bjorn? It's Bjorn. Bjorn. Yeah. Very, very unlikable from the. I mean, they try to set up. Okay, I love when movies do this because like he's kind of an asshole to David Jonsson's Andy, who is a android or artificial person, as he wants to be called. And they explain why he is because of the situation with his mom and like, she got left behind based on like, another one of those models, saying that was the best thing to do was leave her behind and she ended up dying. And so I was like, okay, movies do that with a throwaway line to explain like, why is this guy such a dick? It wasn't necessarily enough for me because like he was just so good job on Spike Fearn's part. He was good for what he had to do. Because I was like, that guy has to die first. And I guess like technically, did he die first? No, he don't. Aileen Wu died first, I guess. Navarro, that's right.
Yeah, she was the one that died first.
I think she's next though.
Yeah. And there's also some confusion, and I've seen this online. So Isabela Merced's character Kay is pregnant, and the relationships from what I thought. So Tyler, who is Archie Reneaux's character, is her brother.
Right.
And they, according to the press notes, she is Kay's cousin, or Kay is Bjorn's cousin.
Right.
But there are some people that were speculating that like when Rain finds out that she is pregnant because she gets sick on the ship, she asks like basically who the father is, and she says some asshole, and some people assume that asshole was him. And then they're also assuming that he's an asshole because like after the whole like ship wrecks and it's after the whole chest bursting scene and she's like walking around and he finds her after she finds like the new like kind of cocoon like where the alien's like about to grow. They see each other and I guess people have looked into this like gaze that they give each other that's like maybe goes on a little bit long, maybe too long.
Right,
like,
he comes behind her and covers her mouth, and they are staring at each other.
And they're staring at each other. And like my buddy saw it, he was like, "Dude, I thought they were gonna make out." And then he was like, "And was that not the father of her baby?" And I was like, "Well, no, that's her cousin." And I was like, "But like there are a lot of people online that were speculating, like, no, I think he was the asshole that got her pregnant." And I was like, "But then I found out, like, no, that was her cousin, so that can't be the case, right?"
Shouldn't be the case. I never got. That's an interesting point. I feel like if they wanted to create that illusion, that there would be a little bit more of a direct nod instead of people reading between the lines like that. That is interesting, though. Yeah. I was under no impression that he was the father. There was not really much of an attempt to identify it. But a great.
I think people are like jumping into it too much because, like, I think he does something asshole-ish right before the scene where she gets sick and she asks who the father is and she's like, "Oh, some asshole." So like they were like, "Oh, he has to be the asshole, right?"
Surely and there's more than like, one asshole in their like, little colony planet.
Yeah, right. And I'll have to send you some of like the status updates and like videos where people have like really looked into that like look that they give each other when like he puts his hand over her mouth and they're like,
I'll be looking for it tonight.
Keep it quiet. But like they do stare at each other kind of long for that scene. I didn't really think much of it until other people pointed it out to me. I was like, "Oh, I guess there was a linger." I don't know. I mean, that was a choice, I guess. Well, I don't really know.
The child looks nothing like him, so
no, it does not. No,
you know
it does not.
Naively of me, I did not really attribute any significance to the fact that Kay was pregnant early in the movie. I just kind of took that, oh, it's an interesting character detail to set her apart.
Did you thought they were just doing that just to be like, to elicit our sympathy in case she does die? Like, I mean, that's what
like perhaps. Yeah. And it wasn't until she injects herself with the Z01 later in the movie that I was like, oh, well, we're not done with this. This is going to keep coming back in horrible fashion.
We saw what it did to the little rat when they panned over back to the screen. I was like, and like, I love how like they were going to give it to her and then like they stopped. You're like, no, let's not do it yet. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because like we already saw like what could happen. Like the audience already knows what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, she's left alone to her own devices. My brother was like, well, how does she know that would work? Because wasn't she like half passed out when they were going to like give it to her the first time? Like she wasn't really like alert. So like, how would she know that would help her? Really? I guess you just have to assume that, it's a movie and like, even though she looked like she was out of it, she probably was still listening to what was going on.
Perhaps, yeah.
But as soon as she did that and she's like back on like the shit with them and they think they're like, safe, I was like, no.
Oh man, it's we're far from over here.
Yeah. Speaking of character, I know we talked about what did you think of Cailee Spaeny? I know like she's been on a roll lately, movie wise. Between Priscilla, Civil War, and this, and I guess she's gonna be on season 2 of Beef, which is like another big series too.
Awesome. Yeah. Beef was fantastic.
Yeah. So she is she's on a run. And every I think character like this in the Alien movie that's not Sigourney Weaver is going to be compared to Ripley. Like it just happens. I mean, they did it with Winona Ryder in Resurrection. They've done it with the other actors who like in Prometheus and Alien Covenant. But I'll ask you first, like what you thought of her and how she kind of stands up as as far as female leads in this franchise.
I thought she was fantastically portrayed by Cailee Spaeny. Like there was one thing that I appreciate about the writing of her character is they don't give her any like very on the nose girl boss moments. She's not putting anybody down. And this I had attribute to the writing of her character more than her performance. I'll get to that in a sec, but she's very capable, but not without her vulnerabilities. She's placed in danger several times. She's a quick thinker. Notably during the, there's a great use of, I guess, a callback to like Andy's programmed dad jokes where she uses the punchline of one of those to
that was great too.
She can turn off the gravity instead of just kind of like thinking of that out of nowhere. I thought it was great how they wrote that scene and she picks up on that and turns off the gravity. That was awesome. she feels like she really earned all her moments of like quick wit and badassery. I just really love how that character was written. One of my favorite, I'd say, female performances in the series. But her performance was great. I felt she was kind of reserved, which was great. You could really feel the desperation in her wanting to get off the colony planet. I thought they had a really well-written reason for her to go on this journey, you know, at the risk of her own peril. Everything just made sense from a writing perspective for the most part. And that's why I really love what her character did. I think she was on par with Andy Jonsson. I'd say if I were to give him the edge, it would be because he's essentially portraying two characters, and that made his job a little bit of a heavier lift once he gets that upgrade in the movie.
Yeah.
I really liked those characters almost equally. And their tension that kind of comes about halfway through the movie, I thought was really, really heart-wrenching too. Especially there's this like for those, I'm touching on the fact that Cailee Spaany's character was aware that once they got to their destination that Andy's android, he wouldn't be welcome there, and she doesn't express it to him, and he kind of finds out through a third party. And when he has a great callback line later after he refuses to open the door for Kay and lets her get taken by the xenomorph, she looks at him and she's like, "How could you do that?" And he goes, "What? Leave someone behind?" Oh,
yeah.
That punch! Oh, such a great emotional line for someone that you were led to believe can't feel emotion. Oh, it was good. I really, really liked that part. That was a great line. But yeah, they were both fantastic.
I thought they were both really good. I mean, they're clearly, I think, the MVPs of the movie. They have the most emotional weight of all the characters.
Definitely.
I mean, I guess I'll give a little nod to Isabela Merced as Kay. Not that she has like a ton of character development, but I've seen people posting images of her from the movie, and they're like, please put this girl in more horror movies because like she portrays like horrified really, really well. I mean, like if that was her main goal, that character just to look horrified by everything that she's seeing and experiencing, then A+ on her part. But like the other characters are kind of there, and I don't mean that as like I think that's been a struggle with some of the movies after the first two, where everyone doesn't get the amount of screen time to like kind of really stand out or be developed as like one or two people that you have to like stick with the entire movie, which is interesting because like we talked about it with Alien, like that wasn't really the case with the first one, where you had like an ensemble and you really didn't know who you're supposed to latch onto as the lead until Sigourney Weaver doesn't emerge that way until later in the movie. But I love the relationship that she had with Andy. I thought it was really poignant and nice. There was one moment where I almost wanted to reach into the screen and hug him when he found out he wasn't going to be able to go.
I know.
And it's like David Jonsson did this thing with his eyes where he's like these kind of sad eyes when he was like delivering that dialogue. And then even though he found that out, he was just basically like, he's programmed to do whatever is best for Rain, and that's kind of what he settles on. And but it was cool once he got his upgrade and like the character switch, because it was like a distinct character switch. Like it was it was still like
a different accent.
It was like he has more authority in his voice. He it's still a mix of both characters, clearly, because he still knows like who these people are or whatever, but his programming is made him different as far as like what his objectives are, and they are no longer just taking care of her and protecting her. I thought that actually created some good character moments too, where she was like realizing like after that, like she has like a line of dialogue to herself that she had to get that chip out of him because like she saw what it was doing to him. And and her seeing someone that was so dedicated to her suddenly flip. Like I think that's the part when they're running after that one really cool scene where they're like having to walk slowly through where all the facehuggers are.
That was an awesome sequence.
And they're explaining that they can't get goosebumps, they can't sweat, they can't do anything, they no loud noises. And of course that's when Kay radios in, like she's at the door, she can't find the key, and then like you're just kind of like, oh, that's too much noise, and you just see them start to move around. I think he shuts the door and it almost like closes on
Tyler.
Tyler. Yeah. And she's like, you almost basically locked him out. And he basically says like, no, I knew based on like, basically like, timing and all that it was going to work. But she's kind of like, no, like you didn't really know that for sure. That's kind of like the face that she gives him. I love the relationship going from like one where they have completely invested in each other. And then she has to like realize that like, by him being reprogrammed, that he isn't a human like them either. Like he can easily change his personality based on
Right.
whatever programming he has, and I think that kind of made that more clear for her that because I think she keeps calling me like her brother at one point, and one of the characters says like he's not your brother. It's like basically there's no blood. He's a machine kind of thing. Like
Right.
and I don't think she really views him that way until he makes that change, and that's when she realizes that he is. But then that's all kind of course corrected when they do realize that they do need each other, and so I love the evolution of that relationship.
Definitely, and I'm glad that they're both there by the film's end. Although I'm not sure. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about Andy's fate? Because I was under the impression that he was a goner, but we see her.
I
put him
thought
in
he
cryo.
died, but she does put him in
Yeah.
cryo. Maybe she feels like she could like rebuild him and make him better. Like once they get to where they're going, like it's a good way to kind of keep the character around if they need to. I mean,
Yes, true.
I mean, I also thought what was it in the Prometheus that David would like not necessarily be
Right.
really back. So like there's that. But like it's I think it's a good way to keep them around if they want to. I mean they are our last two people standing by the end of the movie. So yeah, but I love that relationship. I thought it was really well written. I think like kind of wish the other relationships were fleshed out because you kind of get the impression that Tyler and Rain have history and there's that stuff too.
Don't
but
get much,
they don't really elaborate on it too much. And I mean, I will say, even though there wasn't a lot of character development as far as like the group and like what their relationships were, they still played off each other really well as a crew. I kind of bought them as a crew, even though there wasn't enough time dedicated to all their roles and how they kind of what experiences they had with each other prior to what we're seeing on screen. So I still thought they played that pretty well. So overall, I was impressed with the characters just as a whole. But yeah, they were my two standouts. I mean, I think it's hard to top Sigourney Weaver, and I love that they didn't really give her a particular set of skills that she'd just be really good at this one particular thing. Like Tyler has to teach her how to use the gun and all that stuff too. Like she doesn't.
True.
I'm like because sometimes movies like that they just all of a sudden just know how to use shit like that, and you're like, well, you gave us no indication that you could do that,
right?
And I'm glad they have that little moment where he shows her what to do with it, and like if anything, you just learn that she's a quick learner and she can adapt to situations well. So she's quick on her feet. That is her particular skill set. Is that she, can take in things very easily and adapt. So like, I don't know. I thought I would consider her up there with Ripley. She was good. I mean, I don't know how in the
I would love to see more of her. Yeah,
and that's the cool thing about the Alien timeline because there's there's so many gaps in between in between each story that there is still room to like tell more of her story if you want to. And
totally.
It's not really so much like a Rogue One situation where it's like, oh, everyone has to die, because like you can't really have a New Hope without if the heroes win here. Right. So there's enough time and space to kind of work with like revisiting these people again if you wanted to.
I am curious though, if we do get a continuation of these characters, what their next problem that they run into will be, like what the story would be to continue Romulus. That part, I think I like that they've left an area that they could explore, but I'm not sure what it would be. But I would love to see a sequel to this or something further down the timeline where we're getting closer to the events of Aliens, because I really want more of this Alien content. And of course, the next Alien content that we're getting with the Alien Earth series is set well before the events of this film, right before the events of Prometheus, and it's taking place on Earth, as the name suggests. So not sure what to expect. I have a feeling rather that we're not going to be treated to a lot of like the actual alien xenomorph sort of material in the Alien universe, more like the philosophical and who are our creators, and is there a deeper meaning out amongst the stars that we can go find, and the invention of like the synthetics and whatnot. So that's kind of the impression I have of that series right now. But are you looking forward to Alien Earth? It is from Noah Hawley, who gave us Fargo. Have you seen that show?
Yeah, I've seen Fargo. He also did Legion on FX, which I really liked a lot.
Okay, I have not seen that.
I'm looking forward to it. I was actually thinking about like what Alien content comes next. I guess Fede Alvarez says he has an idea for a sequel already. I also heard that he would be down to do like an Alien versus Predator, but kind of set in like the Prey, I guess, universe, and kind of
Right.
doing. And he wants to co-direct that with Dan
Trachtenberg,
I guess.
that
Yeah,
sweet idea.
so that'd be really cool. I guess what I'm imagining that they are looking at reviews of this movie and like kind of taking notes, and they're like, okay, like we can't do fan service again because that'll just look like, we don't have any original ideas. But then
right,
they also can't play the beats of a typical Alien movie where like there's a crew and then something gets loose to the ship and then they're being chased by xenomorphs for an hour and a half.
And then they got blown out of the airlock again.
yeah. But because someone I know that even liked this movie, he was like, I don't know if they can do this again. Like if they can just like, won't it just feel like, kind of rinse and repeat if they follow the same outline of what these movies are. And that's true. So I don't know like what direction you take it in a way that, because like the xenomorph, right, is so ingrained in people's consciousness as like this is like the image of what the franchise is, but it can't always just be characters being pursued by that. So there has to be something else that's new. I just don't know what else would satisfy people that would if they would like be okay with like that taking a back seat to like something new, unless they create some kind of new. Well, I guess they kind of hinted that at the end of this, but like.
I think their best course of action would be to tie this into the Prometheus and Covenant prequels and maybe link up with David at some point because he's out in the reaches of space with all with all these sleep colonists and alien embryos out there waiting to perform experiments. I would love to see Romulus somehow put our characters in his path and or something to that line. That would be really cool. We still got to get to the point where the original Nostromo crew finds the space jockey on LV-426. Like there's still, ground to cover to get to the events of the first one. So I think there's still, this is after that, but still, there's still some ground to play. I hope they are able to make it coherent and give us, and still find some alien carnage to give us. But I have faith in the powers that be that are leading this series right now. I hope Fede kind of embraces the role of sort of championing this series going forward with Ridley's blessing, because I know that they're getting along great. Yeah. And maybe if Ridley takes more of a producing spot or backs off a little bit, he might not be able to impede the series going forward.
Yeah, I just wonder like how much he made it seem like from what I read that he had the first draft of the script he sent to Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott basically was like, it was too long, so he kind of like had to trim it down a bit. But I guess when it came to directing the movie, even though Fede asked for advice, he said he kind of took a hands-off approach to it because he was like, it was his idea, and he said he knows what it's like when other people impede on his ideas because he definitely knows that with studios because it happened with Kingdom of Heaven and like other projects that he's worked on. So like, I think he actually saw that like from what every review, even people that didn't really love the movie, they said they could tell that Fede Alvarez is a Alien like devotee, like he loves the franchise. It's clear that he does. And so like I do think that like Ridley Scott probably he said it a lot in interviews lately, like he hopes that he has more of these in him because he thinks he's the right person to carry this on. I know some people want another one from Ridley. I don't know how, and I don't know if they can maybe like co-write one together. I don't know how it worked. Like
that would be cool.
Like, but it's surprisingly there is a lot of room, I guess, even though I'm like struggling like where they could take things, but there is a lot of room for like more Alien content based on, and not just like one creative mind doing it, like different filmmakers, different writers, because there's so much mythology and so much like time to deal with, and a lot of gaps in some of the narrative that you can fill in if you want to. In a weird way, it's kind of like how Star Wars is, but like not as complicated.
True that.
So there's a lot of room to like explore these things a bit more, and I'm down for it. I just wouldn't want it to see it get repetitive and have it be the same thing over and over again. I would still maybe enjoy that. I would still be entertained by it. But I think narratively, like from like a creative standpoint, I'd be like, all right, we're just doing the same thing over and over again. No matter how creative you try to make it, it's still, humans being pursued by, frightening alien creatures, and that can't be the whole movie moving forward, I guess.
Very much. I agree that there's a lot of ground still to cover and a lot of different ways it could go. I also struggle to think how that might be perfected, but I I would love to see it. I'm glad that you mentioned. I didn't really know this. I did hear the scoop about Fede Alvarez expressing interest in a co-directorial effort with Dan Trachtenberg, but I didn't know that he was interested in doing a sequel to this. And by all accounts, it seems like it would meet that criteria to yield a sequel, what with its positive critic response and doing well at the box office. So if we only get another 3 or 4 years between the next Alien film because a sequel is greenlit, I think that would be awesome. I would really, really want that. I don't even necessarily need it to be a direct sequel, but something else in the Alien universe in the theater would be fantastic.
Yeah. Did you have a particular favorite scene or sequence that stood out to you?
Oh boy, I thought some really creative sequences. They're not my favorite. Like I love them both and they were really ingenious, but the anti-gravity sequence with Rain and Andy having to traverse through the xenomorph acid blood, that was genius.
That was really cool actually.
I looked over at Cam, I saw it in theaters with him, and I was like, in all these Alien movies, have we ever had a director like mess around with gravity in any of these movies? And like, I don't think so. Nothing. I don't think so.
Yeah.
So just, well overdue. So that was a really ingenious moment. Also, like you mentioned earlier, the creeping through the room with the face huggers and raising the temperature was super smart. But I really think when the movie went from really good to great for me, and when I was actually first thoroughly like shocked at what I was seeing, was the offspring birth sequence and what that thing looked like. Oh my God, that was. So, and then I knew what you were talking about the third act swing. So the little pod thing is like going off and she opens it and like her stomach is already like expanding and growing. I was like, this is happening. But even then I was just like, I had an idea like that's where it was going, but it's different when you see it. Yeah. When she got her open and you just kind of saw like the image of what would kind of look like a human baby. That startled me initially first before I even saw what the full thing looked like, because I was like, the implications of like that mixed in with like it was just like I told you before, like body horror and like anything that kind of like messes with like your insides like that and like your anatomy, like your biology, like that like freaks me out. So like the mental stuff I was going through my head of like how that works and like how that really just a violation of her body too. Like it was just a whole thing that like went through my head when I was watching that sequence. And then her reaction was so that's why I think Isabela Merced is like pretty good in the movie when she just like basically like get this thing away from her, get it off, like she just wants it off of her, like out of her. And then she like Cailee Spaeny like kind of rips it out and like throws it. And like and I kind of got like why some people were saying like not only was the third act bonkers, but they said parts of it were like vile and gross and disgusting, because like that is like that whole thing was just like pretty vile and gross, disgusting. And then it grew into what it grew into. Freaks me out too. It was just like a weird image, like that hybrid of like those two things. Oh
like,
man.
And that was actually one of the only, like my brother was freaked out by a lot of the movie, but he actually said that like image like scared him. Like
I was like this is so disturbing.
And I guess like partially portrayed by a former Romanian basketball player as well, to get the full effect. So this guy is like, I guess Robert Bosky is 7'7" tall. So so there you go. And then the whole scene where like at first when he was touching Kay's face, I was like, all right, is it identifying as like this is my mother? Or I don't know what to do. And then she's like crying and kind of rejecting it. And like I didn't know, I couldn't tell like what was gonna happen at that moment. If it was gonna be like, oh, is he gonna protect her? Because like that's this is my mom, or it feels like this is my mother, or what's it gonna do to her? And like honestly, I agree with what other people said. Kay went through a lot the whole movie. And just it ends on that really horrific note for her. And it's just like it really is like, I mean, I think as far as like freaky things I've seen from the Alien franchise, it's up there pretty high with some of the best moments from those first two movies, of images I just like will be burned in my brain.
Absolutely. I agree. One of the most disturbing moments, like in just like a not even an Alien movie, but like in a sci-fi horror movie that I'd seen in a long time, and it takes a lot to really get that kind of reaction out of me. And I was like just like disturbingly enthused, I guess, that finally there was something like that really went there. And I know that there's been like an alien human hybrid done before, but nothing to the effect like it was done here. It just looks so unnaturally eerie and creepy. And yeah, when the moment when Kay sort of rejects it, and then I can't even really remember now what it's doing. Is it like suckling on her, or I feel like that's a moment.
Yeah, I think that's
a moment. Yeah,
I think it's like rubbing her face at first, and then like, no, there's a lot. Yeah, and then it starts to. You're right. I think it starts to suckle on her.
That's a moment that I think gets cut. If you hearken, and I just watched the teaser before we started recording. It's like the sequence where it's all like all the dialogue is done like over the camera, sort of drifting through the Romulus station, and we get the pause, and one is like absolutely soaked in blood. And I think that was a sequence that might have been edited for the film. Yeah. So in the teaser I was watching right before this, there is a moment where the camera's panning through the Romulus station, and then it kind of hovers over the cryo chambers, and one is absolutely soaked in blood. And we don't quite get that shot in the final cut of the movie, which I'm anticipating, or I'm guessing is probably from the birthing scene. And so I do think that might have been a sequence that was kind of edited down for gore and violence, because I think that there's a version out there where the offspring really rips apart its mother, and I think that would have been really cool to see, because I can't quite remember exactly what Kay's cause of death is. I know he's like suckling on her, like her neck or her
neck, and he's like holding her, and she looks like limp. I mean, like pretty fucking limp when he's holding her. Like, right. Like, you don't really kind of can't. It was enough for me. I mean, it
was enough to be disturbed by for sure. But I'm like, I know that they filmed a gorier version of that. But oh well, it was very disturbing.
And then also, like, I mean, I know we know that they rapidly, like, they grow so fast, but like to just see how, I mean, there was still a weird image. Like, whoever came up with that design, to like, it was freaky, and it stuck with me for sure. It's and I
only wish it had more victims.
So why do you think some people are not down with that swing? Because some people were like, it did some stuff in that last 20 minutes that some people would like. I didn't love it, but some people might. So why do you think people didn't like it?
I did hear one creator kind of mention how they didn't like that because this had been done in Alien Resurrection. I don't think quite to the same degree. And definitely not, the different circumstances this time around with, Kay injecting herself with the black goo, which did not exist at the time Resurrection came out. Very different looking hybrids. So I don't know, maybe just sort of a repetition sake. That wasn't bothersome to me at all. I did read a couple comments where people were saying that half their theater was gasping and in shock at this sequence with the offspring, while the other half were sort of laughing at its lanky, awkward design, which it does look uncannily like a human that's awkward and lanky, but like its face, I think, is where the real like terror comes from. So maybe some people just weren't convinced by its creature design. I thought it was great. Other than that, I can't really think of a reason why that wouldn't be an absolutely horrifying sequence, like, to anybody. Like, it completely got me. I loved it. I loved everything about that twist, and it was especially because I thought we're at the point in the movie where, like, hey, our characters are out of danger and they're at the cryopods ready to lay down, which, of course, is the case in Covenant too. In the last Alien movie we get, they're at the same spot when we find out there's another protomorph on board. But I like my brain tricked myself into thinking the danger was over. So it was a great little surprise to find there's still something, and even just different than a regular old xenomorph. It's something even more horrific. I love that. But have any other maybe ideas why people weren't in love with that scene?
I don't really know. I mean, one thing because it's hinted at in Alien Resurrection. I mean, it's more of like a silhouette of like what that could look like. And I think that some of the complaint is that it feels like it's a derivative of that. It's ripping off that. More like the complaint of it being like a greatest hits package, like another nod to like another Alien movie. I kind of feel like that is where a lot of the complaints are coming from. Surprisingly, he said that he was he didn't think about that connection. He did an interview after the movie came out Fede Alvarez, and he says he actually hadn't thought of the latter connection to Alien Resurrection until his son pointed it out at the film's premiere. He had recently watched with a buddy of his all the Alien movies, and when The Offspring comes out, he goes, "It's like in Resurrection." That's what his son said, and he said, "I hadn't really processed that way, but it's true. It's this abomination that comes out," the director says, explaining that he'd actually been more focused on the mythology of Scott's prequels, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, which explored the genetic building blocks of humans and aliens when he came up with that
which
moment
is the impression that I was under. That comes across to me totally while watching it.
Yeah, because he said the black goo is the root of the whole thing that was introduced in Prometheus. It's the root of all life, but also particularly the xenomorphs come out of that thing, which means it has to be inside them. It's the xenomorph's semen almost, as he put it.
Right.
So we thought if it affects your DNA, and the engineers clearly came out of the same root of life, it made complete sense to me that the offspring of a human and a xenomorph was going to look like that. So it's fair that maybe he didn't really think of Alien Resurrection when he. It's kind of interesting that because it's in there. I mean, he's definitely he definitely looked at all the Alien movies before he got into this one. I think it's funny that his son pointed it out. But yeah, but I also can agree that he probably was thinking more about those connections to Prometheus and Alien Covenant rather than a moment in Alien Resurrection when he came up with this little particular sequence. Still effective though, even if it is like a nod or like a homage to something else. It still works. I mean, I was unsettled by it. Like
I can't wait to see it again. It's the scene I'm probably most looking forward to again to see tonight. That and all just the xenomorphs being back on screen. Like they are my favorite sci-fi characters. And they do look great. All practical, actually moving around. Like there's actually people in suits, doing those movements. It is great to see. It beats the clearly CGI heavy Xenos in Covenant, which even though I'm a big fan of that movie, I think it would have been done better practically, but
and when it's kind of coming out of like its little cocoon, that I thought that whole sequence was great.
I mean,
they actually showed some of that to us at Comic-Con, but like even the cut of it was different at Comic-Con. So he was right. He did say some of the stuff we were seeing at Comic-Con. The cuts were going to be different when you saw the finished film. So like I remember that seeing it at Comic-Con, and it was cut a little bit differently than what we saw at theaters, which is kind of cool. I also thought Navarro getting attacked by the facehugger thing was also pretty good. I mean, like those things are just gross too. At all, and just to have her laying there and it like breathing basically on top of her face, and then I do love when they were just going to cut the tail off, and they're like, no, it's choking her. Like the more you try to attack it, the more it's going to like try to protect itself. And like even the dialogue when they find a way to get it off of her, and I think it's Andy that's like, basically insinuates like I think it's already done what it needs to do to her. I did want to ask you what you thought about that chest burster scene, because I mean it definitely is more. It's the one in Alien feels more realistic. It just looked. I mean, there's not a lot of it. There's not a lot of enhancements with any kind of like CGI whatsoever, and I'm sure they did some of this practically too, but it seemed like there were a little bit of enhancement on it. So I just wondering what you thought of it. That particular scene.
It did seem to me, and I think the use of like that X-ray machine to see the xenomorph in her chest first was a great addition to that sequence. It I think felt like the most like painful chest burst I've seen. Especially the foaming the mouth of her was a great effect as well, but it didn't feel as like explosive as many other chest burst scenes we've seen and it wasn't as gory as I thought it could be. It really feels like it just barely like comes out of her like breastplate, and it's sort of like almost crawls out instead of like bursts out, which was still an effective scene. I mean, at what point can you like do that scene and make innovations to it, right? Yeah. So I thought it was an effective scene, no doubt, but I could have used a little bit more gore, but I'm probably going to say that with everything. I'm a gore hound, but I did feel for that character in a weird sense. Though she gets off the easiest. She's done. All her horror is done at that point.
I mean, something popping out of your chest like that. Ugh.
Not a good way to go at all.
No. And then that whole scene worked for me. It was just like you just feel the pain of that, and like something come out of you. And I loved, I mean, the X-ray gun being introduced kind of like nonchalantly earlier in the movie. I was like, oh, that's gonna come in to play somehow later, right? And that was a cool way to try to show it crawling around inside of her. And then I think Isabela Merced when she was kind of like, I don't know what to do, and like she's like freaking out, trying to like help her, and she didn't really know what to do. And then like I think that last thing she says is like, please don't let me die. And then just like, yeah. So, and then Kay screams like a top-notch like horror movie girl scream.
Absolutely. Her performance in this was fantastic. And you're right,
dude,
like scream.
She's only 23. I didn't really think about how young she is, and she's about to take off really big too. She's in Superman next year.
Right.
She's gonna be in season 2 of The Last of Us as well.
Yes, that's what I saw that she was in.
The only blip she has on her like resume right now is Madam Web, and like whatever. That's that's coming. Yeah. That's come and gone. So
yeah, exactly.
That's fine.
But she's been really good.
But were there? I mean, that's because they were minor characters. Did any of the other deaths get to you at all, or did you not really feel like you got to know them enough to really care?
No, the other ones were all right. Like I thought Tyler's was. I knew what was going to happen.
He had to die a hero, which is, I guess
exactly.
He sacrificed himself, which was
he gets cool. A great like traditional xenomorph kill, which is great with the
got right in his eye, dude.
Yeah, that was good. I liked that. Yeah. Bjorn's was good with the acid. And that's like basically all of them. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. I could have used a little bit of a higher body count, but it is what it is. I'm not too worked up about it.
Yeah. There's also some really cool, and like a lot of people have been posting images of some of the imagery from the movie. Like I think some of like the scene, just the way it's shot, the way it looks, will down the line, I think, be considered some of the best imagery from the franchise too. Like for an $80 million movie, it looks more expensive than that.
Oh yeah.
And I think proof that you can make these movies that cheap. I mean, cheap being the relative word, but like, not $200 million and still have it look really, really good. I mean,
this and the creator, both $80 million sci-fi big.
Yeah. I mean, there's some like classic alien imagery that I think there'll be some from this movie that you'll see. I mean, you already seen some of it. There's like some of like the xenomorph kind of like in Rain's face that's just kind of like holding back, like it's like interface basically. They have that shot of like Kay like kind of walking in the hall. It's all like lit really well too. Like that's also really cool. I mean, there's a lot of like really cool stuff that they did visually that I also was impressed with. And the score was actually really good too. There was moments where the score like heightened scenes up a lot, and there were some where it kind of calmed things down a bit. It was like a good mix of music, I thought too. That was really good.
There's some titles in the score too featured in other alien movies too, like Elizabeth Shaw's theme plays at one point from Prometheus, which is pretty cool. Lots of nods to the earlier movies, which I thought was great for the score too. I'm usually my first watch, I'm not as great as picking up on the score, but I'm really looking forward. I'll be paying more attention to it tonight for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I know Sigourney Weaver is so like synonymous with this franchise. I know there was like a few years back now, there was a chance that she could have come back in some capacity. I know the director of District 9 had a alien idea that was going to include going to include her. She's older now. I don't even know if there is any room to really utilize Ripley again. Do you think there is, or is that ship has sailed? That's done.
I think the ship has sailed, unfortunately, but I think there is precedent in like the comics where there's something in between Alien and Aliens where she wakes up in cryo and has this big event, like a xenomorph encounter, and then her memory is wiped, and then she's put back in cryo before the event of Aliens. I'm not too familiar with that storyline, and there's lots of comic material. That would maybe be the only thing I can think of, but I think, considering Sigourney's age and everything, like I don't really, and I'm more interested in like treading new ground for the Alien franchise.
New stories,
But she gave us a few awesome performances though as that character, but it's time. I would like to see maybe her daughter's also featured in the comics where she kind of goes out searching for, actually I think it's in the Alien Isolation game. You're playing as Ripley's daughter, which this movie took a lot of inspiration from. So that's pretty cool. I'd like to see that, but no, I think that ship has sailed. What do you think?
I think so, but I've always felt some kind of way that in Alien Resurrection, it's like, it's a clone, I guess. And not, I mean,
right.
It's like, it's her, but it's not. And that was like the last thing we got from her, even though it was a nice little spin on the character, and it was something different. Like, I guess if you're going to keep playing Ripley, you can't keep playing it the same way. So it was, and I know that's why she initially took Alien Resurrection, because it was a fresh spin on how that character could be done, and she liked some of the ideas. And I always forget that Joss Whedon wrote Alien Resurrection.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Strange.
And there are some really interesting ideas in it. I don't think they all come together per se from the last time I watched it. But yeah, I always felt some kind of way that we never really had like that wasn't really properly her. But I guess there's no real way to do it now because she is older. And I do agree that like I think this franchise is more willing to toy around with new ideas than say Star Wars is. Like it seems like when Star Wars tries to like expand to like another universe and deal with new characters, that fan base either sometimes embraces it, but for the most times they're like, where's Luke? Where's Leia? Where's this?
Yeah.
Like, they want everyone that they're familiar with. So
right.
I do respect the fact that they do try to do new things and don't just kind of like regurgitate the same thing over and over again and like,
agreed. Find
a cheap way to utilize a character like that.
Mm-hmm.
But but she is, she's been such a big face of the franchise. I always wondered like what it would have been like if that project would have came together because he seemed so invested in. And everyone was excited. I mean, Ridley Scott was excited about it. I know Sigourney Weaver was excited about it. And like a lot of his projects, they just fell apart.
I know.
His post District 9 career is so weird.
I know. It's a shame that they didn't go in because there's some great videos out there kind of describing.
He came up with some good, like what was it?
Concept art.
There was concept art that was really cool too.
Exactly. Yeah. The idea would have been really cool, but studios just wouldn't bite on it. But that would have been really, really neat to have seen. But oh well, I'm happy with what we have so far. But I am most excited. I think there's more to look forward to in this series, which ultimately is all I wanted Romulus to give us, some fertile ground to continue to explore. And still excited for Noah Hawley's series. Not as excited as I am for this, just because of the I don't really care to see an Earth set alien, but I guess it's supposedly it's going to be taking place like the origins of the Wayland Corporation. So I'm kind of cool with that. Yeah. That'll be neat. And like you said, a break from like just the xenomorphs chasing people. So that will be cool to add some lore to the series, but this is the bread and butter. Like you said,
I wonder if there is any cool idea where there could be like a modern day version of this that takes place on Earth, where that would be a cool idea, like to have them like unleashed on like planet like Earth and not just kind of attacking just a crew of people basically, and just having it be a little more open.
A Wayland colony, like an Earth like planet, like that would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
cool ground to explore. I would like to see something like that. And like you said, a colony would imply a higher body count. So
and you are cool with that.
Yeah.
So before we get to its box office and stuff, any final thoughts? Are you able to score it? Are you gonna wait until after you see it again?
I would score it now. Like that might change after I see it for the second time tonight. But right now, like my enjoyment of it was like a 4.5, if not a 5. I can't really overlook some of like the things that we touched on tonight, like mostly just the AI element to Ian Holmes' likeness and stuff, and so that would mark it down to like more 4.5. I'm somewhere between a 4.5. I haven't really settled on which one I'm at. Tonight might be the definitive ranking, but I'm pretty happy with this movie overall. It'll be one that I continuously go back to, especially when I'm going through the Alien series over the years, and I will definitely be looking to cop this on Blu-ray as soon as I can. So what about you? How'd you feel?
I quickly gave it 4.5.
Nice.
I thought I was impressed by it. There were some like things that like I think could have been a little different. Just talking about the whole AI scene too. Like, but again, I was actually impressed that they actually used that more in the story than I thought they were gonna use it for. But yeah, I was impressed by visually. I was impressed by it. I was impressed by the direction, the characters, the acting. Everything about it I really enjoyed. It just wasn't on a perfect level as say Alien or Aliens. What's funny is when I ranked them, I actually gave Alien and Aliens, I gave them both 5 stars. I think it's just a different degree of the 5.
Same here. Yeah.
And I actually right now I have Romulus like right behind Aliens, so it's ahead.
As do I.
It's ahead of Prometheus and Covenant. I think you might have that. Do you have Prometheus and Covenant kind of switch? Like, do you have Covenant in front of Prometheus? Or
I do, yeah. So Prometheus just got knocked down to the number 5 spot in my ranking, but I still like that movie for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, Covenant to me is the better of the two, if you ask me. But that's because I'm a xenomorph lover.
Lover.
apologist. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a Funko thing over there too. Like,
Yeah.
that's so awesome.
Exactly.
I feel like I should have more. I mean, I'm still in search of your popcorn bucket, which I guess is a hot commodity here.
I'd say that ship has probably sailed. They sold out of my before it even screened for the first time, which is annoying. But I went and looked. But I appreciate it.
Well, I do have a facehugger for you in the poster.
Yeah,
so
I'm pumped. I'm pumped for that. I appreciate that.
When we watched it to our IMAX screening, they all had them like all the facehuggers just sitting in our chairs, which is really creepy thing to kind of see when you walk into a theater.
Probably.
And they had us all take pictures with them. It was fun. I
cool.
got the one at Comic-Con. I was like, oh, I wish I would have grabbed another one, and then like walked in that, and they were like, oh, they're there. So worked out.
Well, thanks.
So yeah, I will be getting that over to you very soon. I don't know where you're gonna put the facehugger, but find it.
Oh, nice.
I found a spot behind me on my lamp.
Yeah. So, I may or may not be pranking my girlfriend and or mother with that. Very unconventional times. I can't wait to see the reaction to that.
I was impressed by the viral marketing they did for it, like just the people being like attacked by facehuggers, like, kind of like at theaters and stuff. I just wonder if they have what kind of clearance they have to get to do shit like that. Because what if you scare like the wrong person and they're not, if they got like a bad heart or like something like,
right? I know,
and they see something like that, like it's but yeah, they marketed it pretty well and marketed so well it did dethrone Deadpool and Wolverine over the weekend after a 3-week run. After a 3-week run at number 1, it opened to $42 million. Now, I know I said 50, you went high at 55, but this is not a bad opening, especially considering that worldwide it opened to $110.1 million globally on an $80 million budget. This is a movie that's supposed to go straight to streaming, so this is a good pivot.
Absolutely.
For them.
Maybe this will be a lesson.
And you know where it's killing it right now? It grossed $25 million alone in China. Apparently, they love this there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they think that that's going to help get it to at least a little over $300 million worldwide, which would be a really good good thing for the franchise. And also, again, good thing that they kept the budget like low, because I think the last few were pretty expensive budget-wise.
Well,
and
Ridley
I think it was smart
for that.
I mean, they probably gave it a streaming budget. Like that's probably like what that was. Like, I mean, Prometheus had $130 million budget. So if this would have had that kind of budget, we'd be maybe talking a little bit something different. Like, might have been like a little too low. Alien Covenant came down a little bit to $111 million. So to keep it below $100 million was smart.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fede
really
is a competent filmmaker who really was able to rein that budget in clearly, because like you said, this movie looked fantastic almost
way more
entirely throughout. Yeah, absolutely. But glad to see it's doing well.
Yeah, and I think these grosses guarantee that we get more Alien content in the future. So
fantastic.
And hopefully, like you said, without like the 7-year gap, because that would be nice. You don't need 7 years in between Alien movies. Now I don't need them like every year, but like
right. Every few years would be nice.
Every few years would be nice, and yeah, for everyone nitpicking, like I mean, I think you can find anything to nitpick about it, but not enough for you to like. I think this movie did what it needed to do to kind of get people interested in the franchise again.
Totally.
And I don't know how you feel about fan service. Like if you think it's bad or if you think it's good, I think it is necessary to kind of please people who are familiar with, the good entries of these movies, like like what got them invested in it. Now, if it's a whole movie full of fan service, I can see that being annoying, but I didn't think this was like a whole movie filled with like, just like, look at this nod to this. This is a nod to Alien. This is a nod to Alien. So look at this little nod to Alien 3. Like, I didn't really feel that way. Some people seem like the way they were complaining about it was as if it was wall to wall, like,
no, I don't agree with that. Movies. I think there was a healthy dose of it, but there was enough to keep it original, do its own thing as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm cool with fan service as long as it's done right.
Now that being said, I want the next one to have more of its own identity.
To get away from that.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right. Well, unless we I forgot. We have to
right.
We have to
The Crow.
The Crow, yeah. The remake of The Crow that they don't want you to call a remake, because we get emails for it a lot at Movie Web. Like, please don't call this a remake. It's not a remake. Reimagining, whatever.
Okay. Tomato.
It's opening this weekend. We are at the end of the summer movie season, by the way. Alien was like the last big movie. Everything else in August is fighting for scraps. There is a chance that Blink Twice, which we're not predicting, might do a little like small business based on the reviews it's getting, because so far it's been pretty positive. But this is it. So hopefully all the movies that are out now, they can reap the benefits of not having anything good out for a few weeks. So that means go see Alien, go see Deadpool and Wolverine again. Twisters is still doing very well, even though it's out on digital. So
okay, interesting.
It Ends With Us got the ladies going to that, so that's good too.
Holy, is Blake Lively ever facing some controversy over that?
I know, and it's silly. When you had to dredge up like interviews from 2016 that make her look like she's not, like, there's so many instances of actors being in a bad mood during a press junket.
True, that for sure.
Because a lot of actors don't like them; they're annoying. And then no one's gonna make they're not gonna make me hate Blake Lively. She's fine, like whatever. Like she was a businessman and producer on this movie. She did what she needed to do to make it make money, and it did. And I think one of the guys at Sony came out in their defense, said that they would make 12 more movies with her based on how she promoted this one. So, it's easy to label her the bad guy. I mean, I think what ended up happening, what happened is that her and this guy didn't get along. The other cast members probably didn't get along with him either, and they rather side with her than him. And then the internet sleuths got involved, and they started like picking apart every aspect of the marketing. But it's worked because the movie has already made 180 something million worldwide.
Oh my word!
On a $25 million budget. I think there's a sequel to this book, so
okay, we can guarantee
that's probably coming. And as Justin Baldoni said, Blake Lively should direct it. He said it with a little bit of shade.
That's funny.
Yeah, he said that she should direct. He's like, I think I'm spent, and I think she's ready to direct, was his last exact words. So she should do it.
That's hilarious.
So okay. So there's like a little bit of something for everyone, and these other movies that are left have to settle for scraps, I guess. Yeah. So you're gonna be I mean, this is like the lowest low end and high end I think we've done on the show. As far as predictions.
Okay.
So the low end is $7.5 million.
Oh my god.
And the high end is $11.5 million. Bear in mind, this is so low because there's so much negativity surrounding, like, people didn't even want it remade. It's been moved around the release calendar once or twice. And no reviews yet. It's under embargo until Thursday night. So the day before.
Okay. This has everything going against it right now.
They are pulling various like comments from like test screenings from like, so I saw on their official page they have like these little blurbs from people on Instagram saying like how amazing the movie is, but they're not from critics, they're just from like regular.
Yeah, take that with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah, so I don't know.
Well, would you like to lend your prediction first? I think I went first last time with or Romulus.
I'm trying to factor in if there is any like a little bit of a curiosity factor to see it based on the IP of the original. But so many people love the first movie, and it's beloved for reasons we've already talked about, Brandon Lee connection, all that stuff. So, and there's already other similar like male skewing movies out. Like you have like a lot of you already have the action market covered with like so many other movies in the mix.
True.
I'm not gonna go quite the low end. I'm just gonna go a little bit above it. I'll do like 8.5.
Oh damn.
What was that gonna be yours?
I was gonna go 8. I'll stick it to it because it's a really small gap, but we're not playing with a lot of room here, so I don't. I'll go 8 as well, or 8. So $500,000 below you, so that'll make it a tight race. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't even hit the low part of tracking, but this movie really went off a cliff.
What a bummer for us to go out on the summer movie season with like such a low box office predictor, but it's got a $50 million budget, so
oh boy,
we got almost a Borderlands situation here. I think that movie's already come and gone. It dropped like 73% this weekend.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you get for not learning the correct lessons from video game movies and remakes and reimaginings.
Yeah, Eli Roth, like the last thing you should say in interviews is like, I had no interest in doing an adaptation of the game. That will turn fans off. I didn't even know the ages were off. Like I didn't know anything about the games. So like Lilith, the girl that Cate Blanchett plays, is like in her early 20s. Cate Blanchett looks great, but it's 50.
Right.
Jamie Lee Curtis' character is in her 30s. Jamie Lee Curtis is in her 60s. Like, so there's like a lot of like liberties that were taken based on what Eli Roth wanted to do. So I don't know. It shouldn't be hard to adapt a video game. If you're going to adapt it, just follow the story that fans like.
Exactly. Look at like what The Last of Us is doing.
Yeah, you're making it for them.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right, man. Sign us on off.
Yes. All right. That brings us to the end of episode 190, guys. Thank you for tuning in to listen to us yap about Alien Romulus today. I know this is something that we were both very much looking forward to discuss. There's a big weight off our chest now that it's come and gone. I don't know about you, Gaius, if you're planning on seeing it again or if that itch has been scratched. I, for one, cannot wait to see it again tonight. I'll let you know if that rating changes, but for now, you guys have heard what we thought. By all means, let us know what you think. Anywhere you guys can find us on social media, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Alien Romulus. If you haven't seen any Alien movies before, we are both huge champions of that series, and I'm sure we both highly recommend. Even if it is your first foray into the franchise, it's some great action horror entertainment. And it was great to talk about it with you today, Gaius. So, guys, go check us out anywhere you guys can find your podcasts. You can find us there at Back to the Blockbuster. Lots of episodes for you guys to go check out. Stay tuned for some new episodes coming out here in the future very shortly. And until the next time, guys, we'll catch you later. Gaius, as always, a pleasure, my friend.